And we're back for episode 2.4. Our episode begins with some minor Lannister forces getting slaughtered by Robb's army. Now, Robb never has a point of view chapter, but yes, in the book he does go into the Westerlands and starts slaughtering forces. Now, you may be wondering why Robb is doing this, and the answer is because Tywin and Robb are in a stalemate. Tywin is too strong to take Harrenhal, and Robb is too strong to take Riverrun. But both men don't want to be perceived as weak, so they have proxy wars in other places. Tywin attacks weak Riverlanders as Robb attacks weak Westerlanders. George R.R. Martin is probably making a parallel to Vietnam, which he is obsessed with. The United States couldn't exactly take on China, and so the two countries had a proxy war in Vietnam so they wouldn't look weak. In the end, a lot of people pointlessly died. Now in the book, this battle is called the Battle of Oxcross. Robb's wolf Greywind finds a secret path around Lannister forces, and Robb slaughters a bunch of green boys in training, along with Tywin's cousin, Stafford. We can see that Robb's wolf, like Jon's wolf, is guiding him, and it seems the wolves are guiding them into war. Oxcross didn't benefit Robb at all, but it certainly angered Tywin and probably pushed them further away from a peace deal. Now next we are introduced to Roose Bolton. Now as I mentioned before, Roose isn't with Robb in the book, but on the other side of the Trident with Robb's other forces. Now in this scene, Roose wants to torture people in order to learn more about Lannister positions. Robb mentions that his father banned flaying people. Now in the book, flaying has been banned for thousands of years, and the Boltons would specifically flay Starks. Now our author has another story called Dying of the Light that involves flaying. This flaying occurred because one house thought another house was less than human because they could shapeshift. And so I'm guessing that the Boltons flayed Starks because Starks were able to skin change. Now next we are introduced to Robb's potential wife, Talisa. Robb's wife in the book is named Jane Westerling. Robb is injured taking Westerling land and is cared for by Jane. Robb ends up sleeping with Jane, feels guilty about taking her maidenhead, and marries her. Later the Westerlings are rewarded by the Lannisters, and so it seems Robb's seduction was intentional. The Westerlings also have connections to Eastern spice traders and the witch Maggie the Frog, and so some wonder if Robb was slipped a love potion, or the Westeros version of Viagra and a roofie. Now in our next scene, Joffrey is psychologically torturing Sansa with a crossbow, and then he has Sir Meryn Trant beat Sansa and strip her naked. Now in the book, this is done by a Kingsguard named Boris Blount. The show has really made Meryn Trant into an evil guy, but it's not so much the case in the book. So there are 7 Kingsguard. Everyone knows Jaime and the Hound. The 3rd Kingsguard is Sir Mandon Moore from the Vale. Mandon Moore is on the Kingsguard because Lady Lysa wanted him there, and he's most likely a Littlefinger crony. Boris Blount is a favorite of Tywin Lannister. He's the most cowardly, the worst fighter, and likes to visit whores. Preston Greenfield is brave and a good fighter, but he's a big dickhead. He laughed at Barristan Selmy when he got kicked out of the Kingsguard. And he's breaking his oath by sleeping with this Draper's wife. Aerys Oakhart is probably the most honor-obsessed of the Kingsguard. He tried not to hit Sansa very hard when ordered to, and felt really guilty about it. He knows Kingsguard history in and out, and it's likely him who's recording all of the Kingsguard history in their white book. Aerys, though, breaks his vow by having an affair with the Princess of Dorne, Arianna Martell, and he essentially commits suicide when Arianna Martell tries to kidnap Myrcella. And finally, we're left with Meryn Trant. Although Jaime calls him sly and cruel, Meryn Trant just basically does what he's told. Sansa just feels he has no emotions and doesn't care about anything. Jaime later criticizes Trant and tells him that one of his duties is to protect the king from himself. Now in our next scene, Tyrion tries to get Joffrey laid and sends him some whores. Now Tyrion only thinks about doing this in the book. He wants to send Joffrey to Shataya's brothel. This is the brothel connected with Varys that was protecting Shae. However, Varys just tells Tyrion that he'll get back to him and never does. Joffrey may be a horrible person, but he's no whore killer. Now in our next scene, Littlefinger is sent to Renly's camp to treat or scheme or something. It's not really explained, and it certainly doesn't happen in the book. Much later, Littlefinger is sent to arrange a marriage between Margaery and Joffrey, and he's only sent because they need somebody with a good position who would make a poor hostage, and neither Tyrion nor Cersei wanted to go. Sending Littlefinger to treat with Renly at this point doesn't make too much sense. Anybody can deliver terms, one doesn't need the Master of Coin to do it. Nonetheless, this leads to some extra scenes between Littlefinger and Margaery, and Littlefinger and Cat. Interestingly, the show has decided to have Littlefinger deliver Ned's bones. Now, Ned's bones are a fun little mystery for book readers, and their location seems to be very important. You see, in the world of Ice and Fire, it seems that memories can be extracted from dead bodies. This is most notably the case with werewoods, but in the book there's also some head collection going on. Anyway, in the book, Catelyn is delivered the bones from Tyrion, and then sends them north with a man named Hal Mullen. Hal then disappears, and no one knows where Ned's bones have gone to. Some people think that maybe he was stopped by the mysterious Northern Lord Howland Reed, or perhaps Hal was captured by the Ironborn. This is a fun thought because this means Ned's body might actually end up in Slaver's Bay. However, I think that Ned's body went south and is in Old Town with the Maesters. You see, Hal Mullen was appointed by Robb, which means he was actually appointed by Maester Luwin. If there is a Maester conspiracy, and I think there almost certainly is, it's likely that Hal Mullen is one of their agents. Now next, Dany's Blood Rider returns, having found the city of Qarth. Now in the book, Dany had sent out her 3 Blood Riders in 3 different directions, and as I said last time, one of them found a dragon skeleton. The second Blood Rider returned having found more abandoned cities. One had been warded with skulls on top of spears. It's uncertain what happened to this area of the world and why these cities are abandoned. The walls of Qarth imply that this area used to have wildlife. So what killed it off or drove it away? And what killed off the people of these cities? And what killed off Dariah? Are they related? And what about that dragon skeleton? Did it do the killing, or was it killed off by the same thing that killed everything else? What we do know is that Qarth was never conquered by the Valyrians, so they must have had some sort of deterrent to keep the Valyrians away. A magical weapon? A nuclear weapon? Something made this area a wasteland, and George R.R. Martin has been very tight-lipped about it. He released The World of Ice and Fire, which had no chapter on Qarth. Whatever happened to Qarth, it seems to be part of the fundamental secret behind our whole story. Now next we find that Arya and company have made it to Harrenhal, and we get to learn a lot about the Mountain. So the Mountain seems to be a pretty simple-minded dude. He's looking for money, and he's looking for Beric Dondarrion, and he has his torturer, the Tickler, try to get information about those two things out of everyone. However, because the Mountain is such an evil dude, a lot of extra stuff is blamed on him. Now, if we go back to Season 1, Ned actually starts the war by sending out Beric Dondarrion to kill the Mountain based on some pretty dubious testimony. Among many other things wrong with that testimony, it said that the Mountain wasn't trying to steal anything, just kill people. And here we find out firsthand that the Mountain, in fact, cares about money. Now this is significant, as the person that was trying to push Ned into starting the war was Raymond Derry. Later he supposedly dies, and then later after that, his son supposedly dies, both killed by the Mountain's men. Catelyn is quite puzzled at why the Mountain would kill the younger lord. After all, she thinks, lords bring good ransoms. However, someone just tells her that the Mountain doesn't care about money, something we know to be very much incorrect. Are the Derrys actually dead, or are they just missing, like Sheila went, or the people from that village? And so Arya has her prayer list. Now Arya's list varies a bit from the book to the show, but what's very interesting about the book list is that it's very uneven. For example, Joffrey is on the list for killing Ned, while a man named Chiswick is on the list for not being funny but thinking he is. Arya dangerously conflates personal vengeance, universal justice, and her own preferences. And this sadly leads to the murder of a boy named Darian in a plotline that's been cut from the show. Now in our next scene, Stannis and Renly meet in the Stormlands to talk about their situation. Now in the show this is a bit of a pissing contest, but in the book some interesting information is revealed. Stannis informs everyone that he's the rightful heir because Joffrey is a bastard. Renly lies and claims that he only recently found out this information. Renly also claims he doesn't necessarily believe it. Of course, Renly absolutely positively knew that Joffrey was a bastard in a Game of Thrones. He was trying to bring Margaery to court for Robert to marry once he put aside Cersei. This move would make no sense if he didn't know about the incest. Of course, the big question is, why did these two brothers, who both knew about the incest very early on, not talk to each other? Stannis claims he didn't tell Renly because it would look self-serving. He wanted Jon Arryn to tell Robert because Jon Arryn would be a more trustworthy source. And Jon Arryn was still looking for further proof when he was killed. Perhaps there's some truth in that, but Stannis still had a full year to contact Renly after the death of Jon Arryn. So why didn't Stannis reach out to his brother? Well, Stannis did know about Renly's plan to bring Margaery to court. He may have seen reaching out to Renly as a path to Tyrell rule, which is probably also why Renly didn't reach out to Stannis. He wanted Tyrell rule. Now in our next scene, Dany has made it to the gates of Qarth. Now the walls of Qarth are a bit mysterious. The outer walls are sandstone with copper gates and show wildlife. The next layer in are granite walls with iron gates showing war. And the final walls are marble with golden gates showing people having sex. Now this seems like the history of Qarth. During their Bronze Age they had wildlife, during their Iron Age they had war, and now in their modern age they have prosperity. However, it's a bit weird that the new walls go inward. Cities usually expand over time. The newest walls should be the outermost walls. Otherwise, you'd have to demolish countless homes. And so I wonder if Qarth is in fact not advancing, but regressing. And so we are introduced to the 13, who in the show rule Qarth. In the book, the 13 are but one faction. Their main rivals are the ancient guild of Spicers and the Tourmaline Brotherhood. The Tourmaline Brotherhood actually make Daenerys her crown, which she still wears. The Warlocks are also a faction, but how they fit in with the other three is unknown. The city is officially ruled by a group called the Pureborn, and the three factions compete for influence among the Pureborn. Now in the book, the Qartheen actually come out to the Red Waste to find Dany. They send Xaro of the 13, Pyat Pri of the Warlocks, and Quaithe. Why those three particular people got to go is unknown. I'm guessing that the Pureborn don't know exactly what to do with Dany. There's a couple prophecies floating around that should make the Qartheen concerned. One says that she'll birth the stallion that mounts the world, and that the milkmen will tremble. Another says Azor Ahai will return and save the world. So should one kill Dany, embrace Dany, or send her on her way? I imagine the Qartheen are divided on this issue, which would also explain why they didn't just take her dragons. Now next we are treated to this extra scene where Gendry is about to be tortured by the Tickler. He's saved just in the nick of time by Tywin's arrival. Now in the book, nothing like this happens at all. The torturing stops the minute they get to Harrenhal, and Tywin never gets this close to any of their crew. Arya is not made Tywin's cupbearer, but is made the servant of the understeward, Whis. And Whis regularly beats Arya. Now in our next scene, Lancel arrives on Cersei's behalf and demands that Pycelle be released from the Black Cells. This scene is very much like the book, and Tyrion blackmails Lancel into becoming his spy instead of Cersei's. Again, Tyrion spends way too much time trying to thwart his sister and not paying attention to Varys and Littlefinger. And finally, we have a set of scenes related to the infamous Shadow Babies. Now things are very different in the book than they are in the show on this one. Now in the show, Stannis clearly has sex with Melisandre, and then Melisandre releases something from her vagina in a cave. And later, Renly is killed. It seems rather clear that Stannis is consciously killing his brother with black magic. However, in the book, we're not even sure if Stannis is having sex with Melisandre. She visits him at night, but Stannis also has trouble sleeping, and Melisandre helps him sleep. It also seems that Stannis doesn't know about the murder of Renly. He's fast asleep when Renly is killed, and no one can awaken him. However, he does dream that he killed Renly. This is of course very similar to Bran when he wargs Summer. He can't be woken and feels the whole thing is a dream. So Stannis seems to be skin-changing, but skin-changing air. A piece of his consciousness seems to have left his body and killed Renly. Now this all may sound kooky, but it's also the exact plot of George R.R. Martin's favorite movie, Forbidden Planet. A piece of a man's subconscious mind goes around killing people, and he's only somewhat aware of it as a dream. That's right, Renly was killed by Stannis' id monster. Now the book has a second Shadow Baby incident that involves Davos, Melisandre, and the cave. Stannis wants to take Storm's End, but its castellan is being difficult. He won't surrender because he thinks Stannis is going to sacrifice Robert's bastard, Edric Storm. And so Davos and Melisandre go into a cave below Storm's End, and she births a shadow. The next day, Courtney Penrose is thrown from his tower, and so Davos is convinced that this Shadow Baby did it. However, the men of Storm's End, who should be loyal to Stannis, could have just killed Penrose themselves. And so Melisandre may just be doing a shadow trick in order to make Davos a believer. And that's all for episode 2.4. See you in episode 2.5.